Hello Year 2 and welcome back to your online home learning. I'm here to join you this morning for some more maths learning, so I'll share my screen so we can get going. Okay, here we are. So just to warm up our brains this morning then, we're going to do a little bit of counting. We're going to do some counting in 2s, 5s and 10s. So we have 100 square on the screen here, which you can use on the screen, or if you'd rather, you can print your own 100 square off. We're going to start off by counting in 2s from 4 to 42. Then I want you to count in 5s from 10 to 45. And then I want you to count in 10s from 20 to 80. Pause the video here and have a go at counting on your own. And then in a moment, we'll count together. Okay, so hopefully you've had a chance now to have a go at counting with all of those amounts there. We're going to start off by counting in 2s from 4 to 42. Okay, with me after 3. 1, 2, 3. 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20, 22, 24, 26, 28, 30, 32, 34, 36, 38, 40, 42. Okay, now we'll count in 5 from 10 to 45. After 3, 1, 2, 3. 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40, 45. And then finally, we'll count in 10s from 20 to 80. After 3, 1, 2, 3. 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80. Okay, well done, everybody. So just before we begin our learning today, I'd like you to think back to your lesson yesterday, and I'd like you to think about what did you learn to do in your last lesson? Okay, so in your last maths lesson, so in your lesson yesterday, you were learning all about pictograms and you were learning to draw pictograms. But this time, your pictograms were a little bit more challenging because your key wasn't just representing 1. Sometimes the symbols might have been representing 2 or 5 or even 10 items. Okay, so just before we start our learning today, I'd like you to just pause and think about what is a pictogram. Just remind yourself of what a pictogram is. Okay, so a pictogram is a chart that uses pictures to represent data. Pictograms are set out in the same way as bar charts, but instead of bars, they use columns of pictures to represent the numbers. Okay, so now that we know what a pictogram is, we'll have a look at our learning for today. So today we are learning to interpret pictograms. And we have explored this word before because we did a little bit of interpreting last week. I'd just like you to pause and think about, what does that word interpret mean? Can you remember what this means? Okay, so to interpret just means to understand something. So we're going to be learning to understand what our pictogram is representing, and we're going to be answering questions about different pictograms, just like we did last week. Now, in the pictograms that we're going to be answering questions about, the symbols will be representing 2, 5, and 10 items, just like we did when we were drawing those pictograms yesterday. Okay, so let's have a look at our first pictogram then. So hopefully you can see the pictogram here on my screen. Now, just start off by thinking about, what do you think this pictogram is showing us? So the different categories are blackbird, robin, sparrow, thrush, and a magpie. I wonder if you know what all of those categories are. Okay, what is this data showing us? Once you've looked at what the data is showing us, try and have a think about, what doesn't this data show? So what does the pictogram show And what doesn't it show? So it doesn't show class 5's favourite ice creams. What else doesn't it show? And then I want you to have a good look at the key. See if you can find the key. Have a look at what each symbol is worth, because we know each symbol is not worth 1. So what is each symbol worth? So just a few questions there to think about before we have a look at some more. Okay, so if we're thinking about what this pictogram is showing us, all of these different categories are birds. So I think it's probably showing us the number of birds, maybe in a garden or something like that. Okay, and if we're looking at what each symbol is worth, each symbol, so each blue square, is worth 5 birds. Okay, so each symbol represents 5. Okay, so now that we know that, there's 3 questions I'd like you to answer about this pictogram. So the first one is, how many more sparrows are there than robins? So remember, we need to look at how many sparrows there are, how many robins there are, and then we're finding the difference between those 2 amounts. And then the next question is, what is the total number of birds? And how did you calculate this? So think about the best strategy to use to calculate the total number of birds. What is the best thing to do to find the total? Okay, pause the video here to answer those 3 questions. You don't need to write them down. You may want to do a bit of working out on your paper, but you don't need to write down the answers. You can just have a go at saying them, and we'll go through the answers in a moment. Okay, hopefully you've had some time now to answer those 3 questions there about this pictogram. So the first question was, how many more sparrows are there than robins? Okay, so if we have a look at our sparrows, remember each symbol is worth 5. So let's count our total of sparrows. 5, 10, 15. And then let's count our total of robins. We have 5 robins. So 15 sparrow and 5 robins. Okay, so I'm going to take my biggest number, so 15, and I'm going to subtract 5. And I know that 15 subtract 5 equals 10. So I know there are 10 more sparrows than robins. And then to find my total number of birds, I want to look the greatest number first and then add the highest amount first. So I'm looking at blackbird because I know that's the highest total. And I'm going to count the total here, 5, 10, 15, 20. Now I'm going to count the sparrow because that's the next highest amount, 25, 30, 35. And then I'm going to count my robin. Now I'm going to count my magpie, 40, 45, and then finally the robin, 50. Okay, so there are 50 birds in total, remembering that each symbol is worth 5. Okay, let's look at our next pictogram. Okay, so this time we can see our categories are all about sport. So we have football, tennis, basketball, hockey, and swimming. I want you to think about, just like we did a moment ago, what is this pictogram showing us and what is it not showing us? So what does it show? What does it not show? And also then have a look at the key. What is each symbol worth? Have a look at what that key is showing us. Okay, so this pictogram is showing us the number of people that are playing different sports. Okay, so we can see the amounts of children that are playing different sports. Okay, and it's not showing people's favourite flavour of cake. Okay, and each symbol is worth 2. So if you look at the key here, you can see one triangle equals 2 children. Okay, so we know that each symbol represents 2. So now that we know that, we've got 3 questions to answer. The first question is, which is the most popular sport? You can see that just by looking at the pictogram there. The second question, you'll need to do a little bit of addition. How many children voted for football and swimming all together? Okay, now have a look carefully at the swimming row, because you can see there's half a triangle there. I wonder what half a triangle represents. Looking at the key, a whole triangle represents 2 children. So what does half a triangle represent? Okay, so half a triangle represents 1, because it's half of 2, which is 1. Okay, so how many children voted for football and swimming all together? And then finally, what could the title of this pictogram be? Remember, a good pictogram always has a title. So let's try and give this pictogram a title. What could the title be? Finally, if you'd like to stretch yourself that little bit further, we have a question for your challenge X, which is, how can we show 0 on a pictogram? So if there was nobody that wanted to do swimming, no children that liked swimming, how would we show that on a pictogram? Okay, let's go through those answers to those questions then. So, the pictogram is showing us the number of children playing different sports, and each symbol is worth 2 children. So first of all, thinking about the most popular sport, hopefully you were able to see this looking at the pictogram. The most popular sport is football. And then to try and find our total of the children playing football and swimming, we were to count our football first of all, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. So 10 children playing football and 1 child going swimming. 10 add 1 makes 11. So 11 children voted for football and swimming all together. And a title could be a pictogram to show the number of children playing different sports. Okay, so usually with a title in a pictogram, it starts with a pictogram to show. So a pictogram to show exactly what it's showing us. And finally, for that challenge X there, 0 is shown on a pictogram with no symbols. Okay, so if it was blank, there were not any symbols in that row or that column, then we would know that that means there was no data for that category. Okay, well done everybody. Finally then, for your practice, something a little different. You have got 5 statements here, and I want you to use this pictogram to help you to decide whether each of these statements is true or false. I'm just going to read each of the statements out to you, and then you can use this data to help you decide if it's a true statement or if it is false. The first one is, horses were the least popular animal. Again, that's one that you can see just by having a quick glance over. So is that true or is that false? The number of chickens seen was half the number of cows seen. Okay, so that one might need a little bit more working out, counting the totals, having a really careful look at the key, remember, to see what each symbol represents. The total amount of pigs and sheep is 70. So if we were to count the pigs and the sheep total, there were 8 cows on the farm. And finally, there were 10 fewer chickens than sheep. So make sure you pause the video here. You can take your time going through each statement at a time and working out whether you think it is true or whether it is false. Okay, we're going to go through the answers now to each of those statements. So the first one, horses were the least popular animal. That is true, because we can see, looking really closely at the pictogram, There is only 1 star for horses. Every other category has more than 1 star. The number of chickens seen was half the number of cows seen, and that is false. And let's work out why. So I know that my key represents 10. So each star represents 10 animals. So I'm going to count the number of chickens, first of all, counting in tens. 10, 20, 30. Oh, again, I've got half a star here. I wonder what half a star represents. If a whole star represents 10, what does half a star represent? Represents 5. So there are 35 chickens. And then I want to count the cows. 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80. And I know that half of 80 is 40. Okay, so that statement was false. Then my next statement, the total amount of pigs and sheep is 70. So let's count our pigs and our sheep. 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60. So there's 60 pigs, and it's telling me that there's 70 of pigs and sheep. Let's carry on counting. 70, 80, 90, 100, 105. So that definitely is false because there are 105 pigs and sheep altogether. There were 8 cows on the farm. I can see that is false straight away because I know that each star represents 10. Okay, and then finally there were 10 fewer chickens than sheep. I know there are 35 chickens and there are 45 sheep, and I know that 35 is 10 less than 45. So that one is true. Well done if they were the answers that you found as well. Okay, so to move on to your challenge for today. Now you'll be familiar with this because you did an activity just like this last week. So I am giving you 2 different pictograms here, and each of these pictograms have different keys. Okay, and you can see the key hopefully on the screen there. For each of these pictograms, you've got a series of questions to answer. Now on Teams, just like I did last week, there will be 2 learning sheets. One of them will have the questions with a blank underneath. You can either choose to print them off and handwrite the answers, or you can type the sentences into the document if you would like to. There is another document which has got the questions on, and the sentence starter has been typed in for you. So you would just need to go in there and fill in the missing blank. Or if you'd rather print it off, you can print it off and handwrite in the missing number or the missing word. Okay, so those are the learning sheets for this activity. If you would rather, you can just pause the screen here and answer each of these questions on a piece of paper yourself. Okay, so for the first pictogram, your questions are, how many girls are there in total? Looking at coach 1 and coach 2. How many more girls than boys are there on coach 2? How many more girls than boys are there on the trip to the zoo? That's all together. And which coach has more boys? Okay, so does coach 1 have more or does coach 2 have more? Okay, and then looking over at the other one, we've got 3 sentences to fill in. Dora scores blank goals, Dexter scores blank goals, and Jack scores blank goals. And then it's asking us how many goals did they score altogether? So looking at all 3 children. And then how many more goals does Jack score than Dexter? So again, we're finding the total and then finding the difference between those 2 numbers. Okay, moving on to our challenge X then. So we have got a pictogram here, and we can see that each of these symbols represents 2 ice creams, and the pictogram is showing us the ice cream sold in a week. There are 3 parts to this challenge X. First of all, a convince me. Convince me that there are more ice creams sold at the weekend than during the rest of the week. How can you convince me that that is the case? Then the next statement is you need to decide whether this is true or false. So 3 ice creams were sold on Tuesday. Is that true or is that false? And finally, a justify. If the staff needed to pick one day to have off during the week, which would be the best day and why? So out of all of those days of the week, which day would be the best one to have off and why? So you need to justify that one to me. So 3 parts: convince me, true or false, and then a justify. So 3 separate parts to that challenge X today. Pause the video and have a little go at answering this, either on the document that I've put onto Teams for you or writing it out on a piece of paper. And we'll go through the answers together once you've completed that. Okay, so let's have a look first of all at the convince me. So there were 36 ice creams sold at the weekend and only 28 sold during the rest of the week. So that's convincing me that there certainly were more ice cream sold at the weekend than during the rest of the week. So my true or false, there were not 3 ice creams sold on Tuesday. There were 6 sold on Tuesday. Remember, in our key, each symbol represents 2 ice creams. And then finally, the best day off would be Monday, because that is the day they sold the least amount. So it would be a nice quiet day. That would be a good day to have off. Okay, well done if you managed to convince me and complete those other 2 as well. Brilliant. Finally then, you have a fluency number sentence to end our learning today. We have a subtraction number sentence today, and this is 66 subtract 56. You may want to draw your base 10 to help you. You could draw a number line to help you to find the answer to this. Okay, so 66 subtract 56. My answer would be 10. Okay, well done if that was the answer that you found. Okay, Year 2, well, a huge thank you for joining me again this morning for our maths lesson. I hope you've enjoyed it and I hope you enjoy completing your activities. Have a wonderful day and I'll see you again tomorrow morning. Bye-bye for now.